Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. He blew audiences away with his Tony-nominated role as George Washington in Hamilton. But now there you go. Give a round of applause for Hamilton. I'm glad that you picked up on the pause that I left for you guys to clap. But now you can see actor Chris Jackson in a more contemporary role, and not a musical, in CBS's Bull. Let's take a look at a clip.
Hey, boss. I'm headed to the airport. My daughter's flight gets in less than an hour, so she's coming for her campus visit. Okay, I'm gonna hop in a cab, be back this afternoon. Got my cell if you need me. Okay.
Hey, you wanna take my car? Well, you wanna impress Anna, don't you? You want her to be so impressed that she moves here in the fall so you can be a bigger part of her life? Take my car and drive her. It's very impressive.
Thank you, Dr. Bull.
How are you guys doing, by the way?
Me and Anna? Fine. Why?
Well, for the first 18 years of her life, you were Uncle Chunk, Mom's best friend, and then at Thanksgiving you tell her you're actually her dad. That's a lot to throw at an 18-year-old.
It's funny. She's been really difficult to reach lately. I figure she's just really busy with senior year stuff. But I'm hoping once we actually get to spend some time together, be in the same place, things will get back to normal.
Everybody, please welcome Chris Jackson.
What's up, y'all? Hey, hey, hey.
Lots to talk about. I want to talk all about Bull, but here's my first question. Are you bored when you're not singing? Because you sing so much. Your Twitter handle is Chris Singing, and in this show, you don't get to sing. Do you ever kind of just like, oh, I gotta sing?
I got to sing last week.
Oh, excuse me.
Little dream sequence, you know. Yeah, well, I sing all the time. I sing at the house, I sing in the hallways, I sing, my dressing room is far away from everyone else's.
So you can sing?
I do, on a regular basis, yeah.
Is that because you just love to sing all the time, or is that because you also feel like you have to keep the muscle in work?
Both. Nothing prepares you for being on stage, you know, and singing. But yeah, I mean, I love to sing. That's what I do.
So this, what we just saw a clip of is an episode that is really, it is kind of your episode, you know? As a supporting character in a show, eventually you get one or a few episodes a season. Did you know that this was coming? Did they alert you to it? Or did you just get a script that was like, oh, shoot, I'm going to be in every scene of this episode?
Glenn Gordon Caron is our showrunner and our writer, and all of the words come through his typewriter. So he's in L.A., and so we see him as he's able to come out, but because he's writing and editing and, you know, running the writer's room and doing all of the things that an exec producer does and showrunner does, we don't...
No, he's created Moonlighting, right?
Yeah.
And like
Medium, he's a
very long resume
very
in
much
television.
And he's spectacular in his thoughts and his ideas and how he shapes them and sort of takes us in different directions. But no, we don't have a lot of warning about what's happening from script to script, and oftentimes we'll get the white pages, the very sort of first iteration of the script before he's had a chance to spin it the way that he does, and so we have an idea of what to expect, but we never really know how deep it's going.
I'm curious, this might be too in the weeds, but you always hear the white pages and then the revisions, and obviously they're coming through sometimes as you're shooting, writers are figuring it out. But what have you found, having worked in TV some, what the major differences are between the white pages and then, you know, the final draft? Is it just tweaks of language, or do you find there's still kind of, writers are sometimes, maybe not on Bull, but maybe on Bull or other shows, still working out the plot machinations of an episode as well?
I think it's all of those things. I think that when you have a writer's room, you can have 4, 7, 10 people in a room, and they're all sort of building these narratives that are, some are sort of longer narrative process that go through, that span an entire season. Some are 3-episode arcs, some are 6-episode arcs. You know, our show is a bit of a unicorn in that we shoot 22 a season. Most often, I think the new sort of average is like 10 or 13 because of the new models and different networks and ways they deliver television. In doing so, you have a lot, in episodic television, you have a lot more time. You have, of course, the case that happens every week, but because we're all human beings and people have taken a real interest in each one of our characters, they're honoring that by giving us lives outside of the courtroom or outside of TAC. So
Little threads that strand throughout the whole season.
Very
that
much
then,
so.
That then blossom into like a full episode story arc.
right.
Yeah.
And I was shocked to know that, Chunk had a daughter, and then I was shocked to find out that I was going to interact with this daughter, and then I was shocked to find out that I'm a father. You know what I mean? So it's sort of, there's a lot of different surprises that happen as an actor, just sort of approaching all the material.
For you, are you like, wait, I'm on set tomorrow, and then and Thursday? What are we what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, you have to do a lot of work because we also shoot things out of sequence, so you have to really pay attention to what they're giving you.
How is shooting 22 episodes a season? I mean, that's a massive commitment. If this show actually runs for 7, 8, 10 seasons and you're on it for that run, you might not be on Broadway for another 10 years.
There's ways to work things out. we shoot in New York, which obviously is the first sort of hurdle that you have to overcome. And then after that, schedules get worked out. I kind of came from a fairly successful and busy show when I joined.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, that little thing. I was actually...
Wicked.
Yeah. I was doing Hamilton and shooting Bull for the first...
Really?
5 months. Yeah. For my first 5 months in television, I was still on stage 6-7 nights a week.
So you would basically they would schedule you for like the morning shoots or something, or
they
like
were
late at night?
very accommodating. Yeah, they were very accommodating. It wasn't every day, but they would at least, when you're shooting a TV show, your days stretch out. You don't know how long it's going to take to shoot a particular scene.
You might be on set all day to shoot for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I shot a scene this morning that was maybe a minute long, and it took 4 hours to shoot it.
Right.
By the time you show up, hair and makeup, get to set, rehearse it, camera block it, then actually get into the shooting, and then you have to do a whole new setup. So it's a lot of time goes into very small moments.
It's a fair amount of time for you to possibly do other things or work on other things or sing in your dressing room.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is there a Broadway show in your heart that you've never done that would take you away from anything else you were doing?
I've been really fortunate to do to work on a lot of original material, and so I always say that the next show that I do will be, the one I've always dreamt of doing. It really is about the doing of the doing of the show, the performing of the show, the construction of the show that interests me. And so those things take a long time. Developing a Broadway show takes a very, very long time. We'll see.
It also might be a thing that you may never want to do the show that was your biggest influence growing up or is the closest to your heart, because you don't want to have an experience that doesn't reflect how deeply you feel about that piece.
Right. I loved Guys and Dolls growing up. Yeah. Loved it. I don't want to do Guys and Dolls. Right. It's been done. It's been done again, and it's been done even, again and again. And a lot of these shows don't age well, and...
Yeah, Guys and Dolls not going to...
Well, just as an example, but it's a rich part of our history and a valuable one. While I loved Finian's Rainbow growing up, I could not be in Finian's Rainbow. It's been tried. There's just too many threads that don't connect, and to what we're talking about today, what we care about today, what I care about as an artist. It's not interesting.
I imagine Guys and Dolls is a fairly PG-13 musical, but I imagine there's still lines within it where an audience today would go, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Don't cover your ears.
Exactly.
That was then, not us now.
Right.
When did you first? How did you start acting? What was your first thing that got you going?
As a kid, I grew up performing in church and performing in local talent shows. There was not a large theater presence, even at a community level, until I was around the time I was in high school, and then a new musical director came to a local community college, said, "Hey, let's put on a show." And
where was this?
This was at Shawnee Community College in Southern Illinois, from Cairo, Illinois, and so I auditioned and I became the Artful Dodger in their production of Oliver, and that was sort of my first theatrical experience.
And you'd already been singing in church, you said?
I've been singing since I was 3, publicly since I was 3.
And then once you sort of got this role, I imagine you started taking it a lot more seriously.
It was just something that I did. Everybody knows Chris sings. That's what he does. Or he's not afraid to get up in front of people and perform, or and I discovered acting through a teacher that had come into our district who started up a speech team. You know, you rehearse different like dramatic duet acting or dramatic interpretation or comedic acting, and you come in and you get on a bus on a weekend. They'd have a speech meet, and you go to a neighboring high school, and all of the other neighboring high schools would all come in, and they'd bring in judges who were teachers and who were acting students from local universities, and you would compete essentially, and I got hooked. As a junior in high school, and then I did that my senior year, and then you start looking at colleges. And
what was it that hooked you? Do you know, or is it just something? Was it just a feeling of like, oh, this is it?
Well, I hadn't read many plays. I certainly had only seen 2 or 3 shows that I hadn't actually been in, and so. But for me, there was something about the power of the spoken word. There was something about the power of The Crucible, which was the first real play that I'd ever read. There's something powerful about reading Shakespeare's sonnets. It's one thing to read them, but when you say them out loud, it changes what the meaning. It changes your understanding, your access to them. And this young kid from Southern Illinois who didn't have a huge a real strong foothold in acting or understanding what theater was at all, but I was getting to the words, and the words are the things that just sort of got inside me. And I'm a 16-year-old angsty kid, and suddenly I didn't feel so far removed from my own emotional being. It gave me agency. It gave me an opportunity to see parts of the state that I hadn't been to, and just sort of perceive the world in a different way, which was pretty
There's
incredible.
also I don't know if everybody else feels this, but I find when people talk about the bug or getting hooked, it's also getting hooked to the kind of blackout that happens when you're on the stage, the sort of transcendent forgetting of anything before and after. And almost when it's done, forgetting what happened sometimes even there while you were doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a feeling that you were?
If you're an athlete, you hear somebody like Michael Jordan say, everything was just going in, or a great pitcher who is literally painting the corners, and you don't hear the noise, you don't hear the individual voices. You're all of the training, all of the time that you've spent where no one was watching, you've conditioned your brain to understand something, that one specific thing, so well that you can not only sit in it, but you can also adjust to the most minute changes in the environment, in your own body. All of the training teaches you to key into that in a real way. And once that happens to you, there's nothing in the world that's sweeter than that moment.
Getting in the pocket.
Very much so.
Say.
Yeah.
What brought you to Broadway?
Lion King was my first Broadway experience. We just celebrated the 20th anniversary.
You were in the original cast.
I got hired an hour before the first rehearsal for Broadway.
Were you living in New York at the time?
I was. I had graduated college in *95. I had done a small off-Broadway show, got my equity card, and had turned...
Can I ask what the off-Broadway show was?
It was in a very obscure little piece at the John Houseman Studio Theater that's no longer there. They're on 42nd and 10th, called Time in the Wind. And it was written by Galt McDermott, who played piano for every show. And we performed that. It was a six-hander. It was like 6 people. And we performed that show for 5.5 months. And there may have been 50 seats in the theater. But it was like my first New York show. They were paying me to be. Yeah. And then I was, working in a tennis salon on the side and doing catering and, all the things that survival jobs that you do.
So then you get The Lion King, and what the hell was that like? Because, that's not just getting a show or even a Broadway show. That's getting an amusement park. It's insane. I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah. I learned more about how to work. I learned how to work, but it's like I equate it with like joining the Yankees, your rookie season, and going to the World Series, and winning. It was the most magnificent opportunity and spectacle, and it was the hardest thing that I had ever done. It took us 3.5 days just to stage the opening number for that show. I had never worked in any kind of theatrical environment where the work was that intense, was that physical.
When you say 3.5 days to stage, what exactly do you mean?
When you're teching a show, every element of every moment, like every element of every moment is coordinated, and you have to build to that coordination. Now you put, 35 actors on a stage, they're all moving in different directions. You've got this Pride Rock rising from the ground. You've got the rake that's coming up at the same time. All of that is timed. It's a concert of 150 people all learning their timing. So I'm in a wildebeest costume. I'm one of three. We're like lumbering down the aisle, climbing stairs, but before we can move into place, we have to wait for the elephant to get up on stage and do a big turn and go to the other side of the stage. It was insane. And Julie Taymor had an emergency appendectomy the day before we arrived in Minneapolis. We set the show in Minneapolis. She sat out in the middle of the house in a leather recliner with a mic and staged and set that entire opening number when she couldn't even get up. She could barely sit up. That woman is a beast. There's a reason why.
How old was she when she stayed? She was pretty young when she did The Lion King, right?
Yeah, don't ask me that woman's age.
Oh,
man.
I apologize. I don't mean. I don't know.
I don't.
Like she was.
She had just done Juan Darien, I believe, at Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Disney to take that leap and trust her with that, she'd worked on it for years, and it was an astounding experience with a company that was, for all intents and purposes, the biggest media company in the world, but Disney Theatricals was still figuring out how to be Disney Theatricals. It's not the company that we know now. Tom Schumacher is still there running it, and he is an amazing man and amazing visionary, and he had the good sense to say, Julie Taymor, you should go do whatever your mind leads you to do. It'll work, and it worked. Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm skipping a lot of really great work in between The Lion King and the next musical that we have to talk about, right? Yeah. Hamilton. Right, I'm missing like how many great plays am I missing in between there that you were a part of?
Yeah.
What was it when you got the script for Hamilton? When you guys were workshopping it, because you're part of the original cast, I'm sure you were workshopping it with them as well.
For years,
figuring it out, figuring it out. So what does that workshop look like? The years-long workshop figuring out the piece, is that understanding the songs? They're rewriting the songs. How does that go? Years.
Well, Lin Miranda and Tommy Kail and Alex. Andy Blankenbuehler and Alex Lacamoire, these guys really understand how to hone in on use their own skill sets to like complement and support what Lin is doing. Lin's a virtuoso. He's very, very focused. He understands a great deal of what it takes to work hard, but to methodically build a house. Yeah, and we refer to Tommy as the architect because he understands how to build a structure. As an actor, they're also two of my best friends in the world, and so I'm always aware of what Lin's working on. Right.
What's he got going on right now?
I can't say that. Unspoken rule. No, but they're very gracious with me, and they trust me, and they always have, and so it's watching him come in with 5 new songs is sort of like Christmas, whatever day that happens to be, because you're getting a glimpse of like you can see where he's going. Like I stopped needing music. Stopped needing to read the music that Lin writes. Like I can look at a sheet of paper and know where he wants to zig and zag. Because he has written things that are so intrinsically like where I live, music. You talk about being in the pocket, like he puts it there, he knows it, and so I found great. It's always an exciting moment to sit in a room and hear something new that the world is going to want to hear, but they don't get to hear it yet. It's always nice to peek under the wrapping paper and see what the present is. As long as you can do it without anyone finding out. But we would sit in a room for 3, 4, 5 days, and we would learn this music with Alex, and then Jeffrey Seller would come in, and Tommy would be there the whole time, and the whole time they're shaping. The whole time they're saying, okay, well let's trim this verse, or we could be more specific with that. And you come in the next day, and that verse is trimmed, or that verse is changed lyrically, and it all just seems to work. I wish I knew what the magic was. But the magic is really just about knowing what you're writing about and pursuing that.
I just love the process of theater. I mean, be it a musical or a straight play, you know, that period of time where, you know, people are workshopping it, and before an audience gets to see it, it's gone through so many iterations. Even if it's a play that's been performed, even if it's a classic play of some kind, like a Death of a Salesman, it still goes through these workshops, and they figure out what exactly the actor is going to bring and how they should modify it to fit into what that actor is really great at.
Yeah, and
a different beast.
And it's all baked in the cake, but the most important ingredient is the audience, because you don't know what they're going to respond to. You don't know what they're going to what's going to speak to them, and you want that you need them to bear witness to know if the ideas that you're trying to put forward actually work, which is why performing in front of an audience is my favorite part of the whole process. You know, everybody gets to a point in rehearsal where you're just like, I can't rehearse anymore. We just have to put this up. We have to put it up, and we have to see how it's going to do. Hamilton might be the only show that I've ever done where I'm like, I don't know what it looks like, but I think it's going to be awesome.
When did you
It
realize?
feels awesome to me.
When did you realize it was awesome, or when did you realize that this had become something that wasn't just a musical, another musical that did well and musical audiences knew it, but had really kind of transcended, crossed all genres and demographics?
I don't know if it was one particular moment. I do know that when the president comes in the seventh, preview performance, it's kind of a big deal. The last time that we announced our extension at the public, we were there getting notes, rehearsal. We leave for dinner around 4 o'clock. We come back. I come back 30, 40 minutes later. There's like 9 Verizon trucks out front. Apparently, when they made the announcement, they crashed the internet. They broke the internet at the public. They crashed the phone lines, like the whole thing. Like 1,000 technicians running around trying to fix this thing because nobody could book tickets for the extension because the demand was so high and so immediate.
You're part of being a part of a show like that. You're part of a once in a, not even a generation, I think sometimes even a century artistic achievement, which is like a play or a musical taking off the way that this did. We just had, before you, we had Rebecca Miller here talking about her father, and it was I was racking my brain to think of who else since Arthur Miller has been like a celebrity playwright. It's really just Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, there's been a few here and there, but nothing really that is like a household
I think
name.
what's special too is that he's also an actor.
Yeah.
And he's so he's so plugged into the zeitgeist, and now he's influencing it, which is sort of, I think, what he was born to do in a lot of respects. But
to be an influencer,
to be not someone who necessarily reinvents the wheel, but someone who sees the wheel from a different angle and has a unique ability to present that in a way that is appealing to people. It's not an easy thing to pull off. He's a once in a generation talent. His mind is and his heart are so they're connected in his work. I think people ask me what my favorite show was, and they're always I think a little surprised to know that In the Heights was my favorite show, because I felt so much in the hearing and the reading and the performing of it and the watching it. There's just so much heart that is accessible.
It's Lynn's life, right? I mean, In the Heights.
It's
in a lot
influenced by all of the things that influenced him, and to be able for that to be your first thing, your first, foray into commercial theater, and to Broadway, which is a very, very specific animal. And he seems to understand it. I won't say he's mastered it, but I mean, I don't know what else you'd have to do to master it, except that I say that out of respect for the fact that the genre is constantly changing. So but I don't know that anyone can do it better or has done it better. Not since I've been here for 25 years.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's a question? Right here?
Oh, hi, Chris.
Hi.
Speaking of In the Heights, my friend Kim right there, who's seen Hamilton 8 times or something like that.
A few.
Yeah. And she told me that they're going to do In the Heights in Washington, D.C.
They are, yeah.
with Anthony Ramos or something.
Anthony Ramos. I was
wondering
heard that the other
if
day.
you're going to be in it.
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
Because I don't want to even go to Washington ever.
No,
I never
listen.
want to be in Washington, D.C. at this time of history.
DC's
But
a
I
lovely
would
town.
go if you were in it, and Anthony.
Oh, that's
too.
very sweet of you. Thank you for saying that. No, our schedules just did not work out. I'm not going to be done shooting until early April, but then I have some other commitments that I have to jump right into.
But
so.
you said you could do more than one thing.
Yeah, but not when they're 350 miles apart. Couldn't do that. Tried to. Really did.
Next question. Whoever gave her the microphone, you get a raise.
That's
that was
it.
wonderful.
Amazing.
Right here?
Sorry. How do you approach a role like Chunk differently than a role like George Washington?
They could not be further apart. One of the things that I enjoy the most about Bull is that it's truly an ensemble show. Much in the same way, my first day on set, the first person that greeted me was Michael Weatherly. And he gave me the same spiel that I give to everybody that walks into a theater in a show that I happen to be doing. It's very important when I'm doing a show to extend that to anyone who's new and to say, hey, this is a safe space, whatever you need, let me know. If you have a problem, let me know. Let me be the one that helps you, be in a position to do your best work. And that's essentially what Michael told me. He says that there's gonna be more that you don't know than you do, and allow yourself to be patient. Know that we're being patient, and we're gonna help you be the best that you can be. So that was my first 10 minutes on set. Great start. The amount of research and work that I, in an odd way, am still doing on George Washington is it's a little embarrassing how much I still read about George Washington. But I feel like I probably know more about that one figure than I do anything else. With Chunk, I've lived a lot of his life in terms of just being a modern young man in the city, which is what Chunk, sort of, I think, the essence of what Chunk is. And he's a team player, and he grew up playing sports, and that's what I did. And so there's a lot of corollaries there. But the one thing that I do know about Chunk is that, and just about TV in general, is that even though you can have the lines when you get to work, it's always going to be there's always going to be 1,000 things going on. And what I find I have to do on set is I have to quiet myself in a way that I don't have to. I don't seek to do that in a theater production, because it's more of it is a live communal thing, and it's a living and breathing thing. So it's just a different kind of work, but I find them both rewarding, and I enjoy both of them a great deal.
I think I have time for one more right here.
What is it like to work with Ian Khan, since you both was both Washington at one point?
Ian Khan played Washington in Turn, and we met when I was doing Hamilton, and we felt the instant kinship because there's so few actors in the history of American entertainment that have ever really touched that role, albeit mine in a somewhat unconventional way. But he's brilliant, and he's a wonderful, warm dude, really smart. And we nerd out over George Washington. Like seriously, it's like we have an unspoken thing. We've read the same books. We've encountered the same sort of scenarios, if not in our work, certainly in our research. And so to that end, we enjoy each other. I really, really treasure that guy. He's a really, really great guy. And he introduced me to Tony Kornheiser, he was one of my personal heroes.
Chris, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having
Bull
me.
is on CBS
Tuesday nights.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Chris Jackson, everybody, let's hear it.
Thanks, guys.